With Tony Budding of the National Pro Fitness League. Tony, tell us a little bit about your background.
So I ran media for CrossFit for about 7 years, co-director of the CrossFit Games, and also the first affiliate director. Not everybody knows that. And left in Thanksgiving to start the National Pro Fitness League.
So tell us, what is the National Pro Fitness League? And it's a brand new thing. We've heard some rumors about it, but I'd love to hear more about it.
Yeah, so it is a professional spectator sport. It is a league of teams that compete head-to-head. So we're talking about 11 races in a 2-hour period, and the races are a fixed amount of work, but the teams are allowed to strategize and substitute on the fly, so you can really use your team in a different way than normal, and because of that, it's unlike anything that's ever been seen.
So who are these teams you're talking about? How many are there? Where are they based? Are they based around the country?
Yeah, we've got 5 teams announced, and we'll have 3 more shortly. So the first 5 are New York, LA, San Francisco, Phoenix, and Philadelphia. And it is going to be the New York Rhinos versus the LA Reign. And we're going to have those competitions, and it's regionally based. And you're going to have that same, I grew up in Boston hating the Lakers, so it's going to be that same kind of passion.
I grew up in New York hating the Lakers too, don't worry. And hating the Celtics too.
Well, and I hated the Yankees.
So you said 5 teams have been announced and 3 more to come.
Yep.
And how have these teams been formed? There's something with combines I read about the other day.
Yeah, well, so the teams are allowed in year 1 to sign 4 men and 4 women however they want, outside the draft. This is happening really fast, so to give them just kind of a little bit of assurance and a little bit of comfort, we've given them the opportunity to form that portion of the team. Everybody else, so there's 3 more men and 3 more women active, plus 2 reserve, 2 men, 2 women, and those have to come through the draft process. In future years, everybody will go through the draft process, and that design is to keep parity among the teams. The worst thing for a league, the worst thing for the fans, is to have a dynasty, a dominant team where there's no competition. So if you had a billionaire who decided to come in and just buy up all the best players, it's no fun for anybody. So that's what the draft is used in almost every major sport.
So how do you prevent that with the 4 men and 4 women like you talked about now? People, one team just coming in and buying it up. Is there a salary cap?
There's no salary cap now. A salary cap will come. But the reality is this is a new sport. It's a lot like some other things that have gone on, but because of the substitution, you could have athletes that, say, would never make the CrossFit Games because they have a big hole in their game, but you could play them in this new league in a way that their weakness never shows up. So they would never make it through regionals, but they could be a massive player and a superstar in our league.
It's kind of like the closer in baseball.
Yes,
right?
Exactly.
Couldn't throw 9 innings, but it's great for just 1.
Exactly.
Mariano Rivera.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry to name a Yankee.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about how the teams are formed, and especially how the competition itself will run.
Yeah. So the teams are formed by, it's just like a pro sport where you have, we call them operators.
Sure.
So you have the team operators, and they'll build up their staff. They're going to have a GM. They're going to have the coach, and then they have to hire the players. And they find 7 men and 7 women. And we also have, so co-ed sport, right? It's the first legitimate professional spectator sport. It's co-ed. And you have at least 2 athletes active have to be over 40.
And why?
There's a lot of reasons. One, the 40-year-olds are amazing athletes, and I want to be able to feature that. They can't keep up over 3 days with the 20-year-olds, but for a single day or a single event, they can be just as good. So here we have an opportunity to show just how amazing 40 plus can be, and the storytelling elements. It's one thing to be a fan and you look at your TV and you see this woman do 30 straight pull-ups. You're like, yeah, whatever, she's a professional athlete, she doesn't have kids, she doesn't have a job. And then you come back from break and you see a little up close and personal on her. Turns out she's 42, has 3 teenage boys, and you're like, oh my God, like what happened to my excuse,
Exactly. So is the hope also to be able to attract former college athletes, professional athletes who maybe now are 40 years old and are looking for a second career?
I don't go there. I see that the 40-year-olds are compelling. They're interesting. It's not you're not sacrificing the quality of competition, and you're adding in all of this additional element. What are the human beings capable of? Right? That question, what used to be assumed was normal, is actually really deconditioned. And we've seen over the last 10 years, normal is actually being able to do handstands, is being able to do pull-ups, is being able to climb ropes and run. And so showing these 40-year-old athletes at doing things that 20-year-olds without training are struggling with, it's inspiring, it's impressive. And so who's going to show up? Well, I'm going to let the world decide that. I'm going to let the teams figure it out. I'm going to let those athletes come out of the woodwork, whether they come from no background whatsoever, or a collegiate background, or professional background. I don't really care. You're going to have to compete with everybody else at that level.
So when does the competition actually begin, the actual events, and what is involved in an event?
Sure. So the league itself, the exact timing is going to be in the August fall area. We are negotiating right now with 2 separate networks, and those whichever network we end up going with, the schedule is going to be slightly different because of their existing programming. So we're going to fit within that programming. So depending on that, it could shift a little bit, but we're looking at a 12-match regular season. So each team would play 3 times.
How long would the season last?
Well, it'll depend on the network, but it could be anywhere from 4 weeks to 12 weeks, depending on how we negotiate that playing. And then there'll be a postseason. And one option is to do an all 8-team single elimination bracketed tournament. So there would be another 5 events in the postseason.
And what's an event itself involve?
Yeah, it's a 2-hour match, and in those 2 hours there are 11 races. Now, this league is designed for the fans. So when you're doing true fitness, you have to cover broad time and modal domains, which means that you have to cover a bunch of events that don't necessarily play well on TV. So coming out of the CrossFit Games, I was like, what could we do if we wanted to create something for the fans, for the viewers, for TV? What would it look like? And this is what we came up with. 11 races. They're all short, they're all fast, they're all exciting. A little bit of break in between, right? So if you're an avid fan, it gives you time to analyze what happened. Look where someone failed, or look where they substituted. Predict what's going to happen next. Have your strategy for what the coach should be doing for the next one. If you're a casual fan, it gives you time to go grab another beer, go make out with your girlfriend, talk to your buddy, whatever it is, because you've got a race, a break, a race, a break. We also have an opportunity to tell those stories, give the backgrounds of these amazing athletes, and talk to them, and allow the casual fans and the passionate fans alike to get more invested in these athletes, more invested in the sport, get more inspired because of all the stuff that had to be overcome for these athletes to get to where they are.
And so when you look at the events themselves, do you have those events set? Will they be announced ahead of time? Or is it similar to CrossFit Games where people walk in, they have no idea what's coming?
No, it's set. And so the 11 races, race 1 is always the same structure. So in this case, it's going to be 1 man, 1 woman. There's going to be 4 segments to the race, and it's always going to be 2 elements. Race 7 is actually always going to be a ladder, but unlike ladders you've seen in other events, it is every rep counts, and it's 10 minutes, and how much poundage can you accumulate in those 10 minutes given certain restrictions. So one week the ladder could be a clean ladder, another week it could be an overhead squat ladder, another week it could be a front squat ladder.
And will there be betting on the events?
Yes, I assume so. We're not necessarily going to launch that, but there is talk already of a fantasy league.
Fantasy, now we're talking, real American sports. You're
Exactly. We're actually we're working with Carbon 5 and Cooper Design, both out of San Francisco, and we are going to build in an enormous acquisition of stats, and then building algorithms to be able to predict behaviors. So when you're a fan, you're going to be able to go online, probably not in year 1, it's probably a year 2 thing, go online, create your own team, and then compete in real time against the athletes that are there because of the algorithms of when you hit your substitutions, when you change players, which players you have going when, how many events they've done before. So it's going to be a really fascinating component. There's going to be a lot of gaming built into our web environment.
This is like when I had my CompuCycle, I used to try to compete against Lance Armstrong. He would always win for some
Yeah,
reason.
right, it's crazy,
Do you think
right,
it was
yeah.
EPO? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But you mentioned before there are 7 people on a team, or 7 men and 7 women. But you just mentioned there are only, say, 2 or 3 competing at a time.
Yeah.
Are there substitutions, or what are the other people doing during that time?
Yeah, absolutely. So your team has 7 men and 7 women active. Each night, each match, you only dress 4 men and 4 women. So all of your races have to be accomplished with those 4. Each given race is never going to have more than 3 men and 3 women out there, so you always have at least 1 person to substitute. But in a lot of those, you only have 1 man and 1 woman, or 2 men at a time, so you could substitute frequently. One team might decide to push it, minimize the substitutions, because there's always going to be a little bit of a time lag built into that substitution. And if you can keep your athletes moving fast, don't sub them, because why waste the time? Or other teams may come in and they want to try to do optimized super fast substitutions and try to keep people racing all the way through. So you could have some really classic finishes where you've got a fresh athlete trying to catch a more tired athlete and just racing to that finish line. Should be really fun.
Wow. So what type of venues will these be conducted in? Outdoors, indoors, where?
Yeah, all indoors. And our grid, which is the name, is what we're calling our field of play, is, and there's a picture of it on our website, it looks like a grid, is exactly the dimensions of a pro basketball court.
Okay.
So it's 94 by 50, so any basketball arena in the country, in the world, could host an NPFL match.
Wow. And so tell us, I guess, a couple things that have surprised you, as you've started. Either surprised you in a good way or in a bad way. Sort of every time you start something new, there's always things that surprise you.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I think the number one thing that surprised me is how quickly everything is falling into place. The quality of people that are coming out of the woodwork. Our president and COO, for example, is a guy named Jim Keene. I got referred to him from friends.
Oh, he used to be with Wellness FX.
Yes, and literally the day that I talked to him for the first time is the day he closed the sale of Wellness FX. I just knew that he was good operationally, and that's what I needed, and we started talking. The reality is he is a world-class web engineer. And what we're going to do with our website, the ability to take a business platform that's web-oriented, stack it on top of a sports property that's TV-oriented, and the synergies between those are just amazing.
Tell us a little bit about athlete selection for the NPFL.
So this is one of the most exciting components because we just don't know how much specialization you can have in this league. And so different teams are going to experiment differently. Some will take mostly generalists with maybe a few specialties, and some will really try to push that envelope and really have quite different athletes to play different roles at different times. And I can't wait to see how it plays out, because really you've just got a fixed amount of work. Some of it's going to be light, some of it's going to be heavy, some of it's going to be simple, some of it's going to be complex. And so you could really try to fine-tune and tweak which athletes you play when, and really get a variety of differences. So with the teams being only able to sign less than half of the athletes out of the draft, they need to bring the best athletes that they need into the draft process. How do they do that? Well, we've got these combines going on. So the combines are where hundreds and hundreds of athletes get a chance to prove what they're capable of. They start doing it as an individual, so all day long they just have 20 different stations where they get to show whatever ones they want to show, to say, look at what I can do. Then at the end of that day, the teams are going to select the top 48 to come back for team activities on Sunday. The next day, so Friday is women, Saturday is men, both individual. They come back for team trials, team races. And so we're then going to see them in how well do they do as a group. So we've seen what they can do individually. Now the best ones come back, and can we see how they do working together. We might even have judges false no rep them to see how they handle under pressure. This, because remember, this isn't a competition, it's a tryout. So probably shouldn't have tipped my hand there, but you get this idea that this is not just an unknown and unknowable competition. The events are known, people are going to have a chance to practice them, and then under pressure, when you're racing and you see someone in the other lane going down and getting ahead of you, can you hold your composure? Can you get the work done? So it's going to be an interesting process to see how these teams select the athletes. And some teams are going to be pre-selecting the 40-plus athletes, and they're going to be looking for studs or specialists. Some teams are going to pre-sign the studs and specialists, and they're going to be looking for the 40-plus athletes. It's going to be really fun to watch this play out.
So maybe you have judges who just can't count right, and then it solves your problem.
Right, exactly.
Any possibility of doing wildcard athletes? Like back in the day, the World Triathlon Corporation for Ironman, they started to invite top marathon runners or top cyclists, people who are not triathletes in particular, because they knew that it would bring a lot of excitement. How would the specialist either kick ass or get killed, by the others?
Yeah.
And some of them even won, right? So would you consider that sort of thing? Say you take somebody who's already a world-class athlete, either a top college football player or a top, athlete in some other sport. Would you consider that?
Well, for sure. And the truth is, I'm not considering the athletes. We're making this open invitation. Athletes sign up. The teams decide who shows up. The teams can invite any specialist or any person they want to come go do the combines. They can actually sign them outside the combines if they want to allocate one of their 8. So really, it's not up to me. We're opening it up to the world, and the teams are going to do their own recruitment process, bring those people into the combines, into the draft, and then the teams will compete for whoever's left in that draft process.
So any new developments you care to share with the audience?
Yeah, we're very excited to announce that the official equipment provider for the NPFL is Eleiko.
Wow! Congratulations!
Yeah, it's very exciting. The Rolls Royce of weightlifting equipment.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've never cleaned, jerked, or snatched with a top Eleiko bar, you're missing out.
Wow.
So these athletes are going to be able to compete on the best equipment out there. We're really excited.
Fantastic. And then you're talking about TV stuff as well. So boy, you've got a lot rolling all at once.
Yeah, for sure. Sure. We've got 5 teams announced. Those teams are starting to sign athletes. Mm-hmm. As of right now, we've announced 3. But by the time this is airing, we'll probably have another dozen, maybe 20 athletes announced. I can't tip my hand on who those are, but you'll know when you're watching.
Great. Anything else that maybe we forgot to ask, about the NPFL? How'd you come up with the name? How'd you come up with the shield or the concept overall? Anything, any kind of behind-the-scenes story that people would love to hear?
Sure. So there's no major story with the name National Pro Fitness League. It is what it is, right? It's we're professional. It's teams. It's a league. You've got 2 teams going head-to-head, which follows the same format as all the major sports. Very easy to follow. So that was the idea behind that. We are looking at some creative branding ideas that I'm not allowed to talk about yet, but it's I think you're going to be really excited to see that. It's always going to be the National Pro Fitness League as the company that puts all this on, but then we've got some creative imagery and some creative ideation to really lend some depth to the storytelling around the league.
Are you going to have bobblehead dolls?
I hope so.
That'd be great. All right, last question. It's a doozy. We ask all our video interview guests this. It's a Tony Budding question, okay? If the zombie apocalypse is coming tomorrow, what's your last meal on Earth?
It's my last meal on Earth.
See, everybody thinks about it.
Yeah. I would say lobster.
Lobster? Any special, like drawn butter?
Drawn butter, lobster. Okay. So I grew up in
This is a Boston guy talking,
yeah.
Okay.
And I went to camp in Maine, and every chance I get, I go back to the coast and to get the Maine lobster.
And what kind of sauce are we talking about? Any sauces?
Just butter.
Any sides?
Slaw.
Okay. All right. There you have it. All savory, no sweet for Tony Budding. Thanks a lot, Tony. Really appreciate talking to us.
Thank you. It was great.